Welcome to the WoW, Wings of Wisdom podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration, brought to you by the Writing and Communication Center at Ashland University. In each episode, we invite a remarkable guest from our university community to share their journey, explore the power of communication, and unveil the strategies they use to guide students toward growth and success. Whether you're a learner, an educator, or someone captivated by the stories of triumph and discovery in the academic world, you're in the right place. So settle in, open your mind, and prepare to soar on the wings of wisdom.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of WoW, Wings of Wisdom. And with me today, Dr. Andrew Roble, Associate Director of the WCC, and Kyan McDonald, and the graduate student and a WCC coach. And today's guest is Mr. Bud Boughton. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Great.
Bud Boughton, what can you tell us about yourself?
Graduated Ashland College then in 1973. And I am back as part of homecoming weekend because this is the 50th reunion for our class of 1973. Had a great experience here. I actually was a transfer student. Transferred from the University of Buffalo after they dropped their football program. I was there on a football scholarship. I came to Ashland, played for Fred Martinelli in the Ashland Eagles, and just had a great experience while I was here. So I'm excited to be back, see a lot of friends, and it's fun to be on a podcast with you guys.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right, what are you up to these days?
I'm busy as ever. My calendar is quite full. I work for a Christian not-for-profit radio station called Shine.fm in Indianapolis, and we're affiliated with Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais, Illinois. But I sell all of the ad time to businesses in Indianapolis that want to run ads on the station. Wow. And since then, now they've got me doing some podcasts and these 1-minute vignettes called That's What Really Matters. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. I still am very active physically. I'm a certified official with USA Hockey and USA Lacrosse. So staying active and trying to stay fit as best I can. Awesome. And I'm married, but our kids are up and gone. Second marriage, and between the two of us, we have 6 boys and 9 grandchildren. Wow. So plenty to keep us busy.
Wonderful. A lot of blessings.
Oh, absolutely. We are totally blessed in many, many ways. Yeah.
Very good. Well, open up to you guys if you have any questions for Bud.
Well, you said you're selling out airtime right now for the radio station. Could you tell us a little bit about your sales experience over the course of your long career?
Sure. I did in my early part of my career, I worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies, Procter & Gamble, Xerox, and then IBM. And if you look at American business, the corporate models back in that time frame in the early 70s through the early 80s, when you got hired with a company, they made a huge investment in the employees. So, for example, my first year with IBM, for the first 12 months, even though I was salaried, benefits, all of that, I went to training schools. I was considered a trainee for the first full year I was on the payroll. Mm-hmm. And it was after that I became a quota carrying sales representative for them. But that's the way you were introduced into the companies. And because of it, a lot of us as very young people really developed some very, very strong communication skills to help us in the sales process. And being with Procter & Gamble, Xerox, and IBM, I had the benefit of being trained by all 3 companies.
Wow.
So
and in order to be so successful as you were with those companies, you got a lot of business education, right?
Yeah, a lot of business education, everything from how to read just company statement of condition, understand their financial position, understand companies as they were trying to grow, some of the challenges they were facing and being able to understand how whatever it was I had in the way of a product solution, primarily more when I was with Xerox and then with IBM, to help address the specific needs of the business. So a lot of that had to do with really, as we've talked about already, asking good questions and learning as much as we could about the business to understand really whether our solution was relevant to really help them. The thing that was interesting about it, a lot of people think when you're in sales, you're trying to sell every person you meet. And I will tell you, the 3 companies that I worked for said, we only want to sell to the people where our solution is relevant and can truly do benefits for them. If I just sold something to somebody, if I sold something to you, and 6 months later you're saying, why did I ever buy this? You aren't going to be a good reference for me,
No,
right?
no.
So
Yeah.
instead, I wanted to understand your needs. And there very possibly could come the time, as I understand who you are and how you run your business, I say, you know what? We probably aren't a good fit for you, but let's stay in touch and maybe down the road, something will work out. That gave me instant credibility with people that I called on, people like you. They said, geez, this guy didn't just try to sell me down the river and try to make a quick buck and get out of here. And later on, I had some of those people that I had those kind of conversations with contact me and say, hey, I want to give you a call. I've got a friend who's got a business and we were talking. I think you should be talking to him. So I actually had some people I called on that I realized were not prospects, but they actually brought prospects back to me.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how I kind of learned along the way, and it helped me to be pretty successful.
Well, I want to back up just a little bit, but so Andrew asked about your business experience and learning. Now, what business classes do you take here at AU to prepare you for that business career? I know you majored in health education, right?
Yeah, a loaded question, because I am a poster boy for liberal arts education. I did not take a single business class at Ashland University or at the University of Buffalo. I was a physical therapy major when I was at UB.
Right.
I came here and found out they did not have physical therapy as a major. And most of my science classes I had already taken applied to the undergraduate program for physical education and health education. So I chose to finish out and get my degree as a physical education, health education major. And then when I got introduced into corporate America, that's when I got my business education. They educated me, and really they were doing that with every person that got hired with me. So when I was in some of the sales school classes at Procter & Gamble or Xerox, we'd ask each other, geez, where'd you go to school? What'd you major in? This guy was an economics major. This guy was a business administration major.
Right.
There weren't many phys ed majors in there, I will say that. But when I asked around, that's what I found out. And even if you were a business administration major, you were going to go through the same training at IBM that I was going to go through.
Right.
So, and I think really what it pointed out is they were interested more in their hiring process, not so much what you majored in, but what your grade point average was and how effectively, how good did you communicate in the interview process.
Oh, wow.
That was a big part of it.
What do you think the strongest skill of a communicator is? What do they, a great communicator, a great teacher, a great successful person, what do they need to do the most to be successful?
Well, that changed over time, because we all think, and you've asked me to tell my story, so I'm not afraid to tell the story. But really, for me to be the best communicator with all 3 of you, I need to ask a lot of questions.
Right.
I need to ask you, geez, what was your favorite class when you went through your undergraduate studies, and why was it your favorite? And the more that I get from you when you share that kind of information with me, I can probably have a stronger conversation with you, because as I learn those things, it leads me to ask more of those questions. And typically too, just like you guys, you made me feel great. You want to know about my background and everything. Well, guess what?
Yeah,
I
we're
want
honored.
to know about your background. And when somebody starts to ask those questions, you tend to migrate and just have a better relationship with that person. So much in the sales relationship is based on trust. And think about it, anytime you've had somebody that comes into your world and is immediately, you know, they're going to try to sell you something. It's life insurance, it's a home mortgage, it might be anything. We always feel pretty guarded because we feel like this person is probably trying to do the best deal for him, not for us. But if he comes in and really starts to ask the questions and says, you know, we may be a good solution for you, we may not. Let me get a little bit more information, and that way I can probably do the best job of helping you. Sometimes the best way I help people was to walk away from and just say, you know what, gosh, I'd love to work with your company, but right now where you are, I think you probably need to do this, this, and this, and then we could have a better conversation. So
the honesty you talked
the
about.
honesty, yeah, I mean, and that's where the trust starts with.
Right.
And I'm a big believer. I have another book where I talk about hope in a big way, but hope for me is an acronym, and the H in hope is all about honesty. That's where we begin.
Very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Well, I was going to ask a question about the book that you handed out yesterday, the Missing Piece. It was interesting when you were just talking, you mentioned that one of the podcasts that you run is called What Really Matters. And when I looked at a lot of the reviews and a lot of the comments on what your book was meant to them, one of the key themes was that you shared a lot of very relatable experiences. You didn't, overemphasize certain points or like hyperbolize certain things. It was very relatable. And I wonder, when dealing with communication, how important is it to be relatable to the people you're talking to? And, you mentioned honesty. I wonder how much of this did you intentionally make a focal point in your book, being relatable to your audience?
Well, as you go through the book, and you'll find this, and this is one of the most effective ways to communicate. And I kind of missed on this yesterday, guys. I let you down when you had me doing the speaking engagement, but it's to tell stories. I can tell you, when I presented in the banking software business and we're coming to the final presentation, I'm in a room with a board of directors. There's 12 to 15 men and women around this horseshoe shaped tables they've set up, and they really haven't heard the whole story. There's a couple people there that have been involved evaluating us against our competitors, but now this is the final presentation. And you know what? I could get there and talk about all the statistics and the data that backs up why we're a good decision, why we're cost justified, all of those things. But you know what, really? When those people leave the room, probably in a half an hour, they've forgotten all that stuff.
Right.
If I would say to them instead, as I look at your bank today and where you are, let me tell you a story about another bank very similar to you guys. And it would happen to be a bank, which this was a story I told a lot in upstate New York. There was a very small bank. They were concerned about handling technology. They didn't have the expertise internally, so on and so forth. But they went ahead, they made the decision, yeah, we're going to do this. And they bought our software, and we helped them implement it, and we trained their employees, etc. And today they're functioning better than they've ever, and they're growing, and people will remember the story.
Right.
And not only will they remember the story, but many times they will go and tell the story to somebody else. They aren't going to do that with all the data and the statistics.
Right.
So I think telling stories and being relatable, as you pointed out, is a huge way to connect with people. And I think sometimes too, we try to tell that story, but we haven't figured out whether it's relatable enough to them. We find that out how we ask more questions. We just ask more. Tell me more about yourself. What is your current situation? Gee, that's interesting. Was it always like that here in the bank or in your business? It's asking those questions and drawing out from the individual what their personal experiences have been. And then from there, there's a much better chance that I do have something that might be relatable, you know? Yeah, so that's how we approached it and how I worked with the salespeople that worked for me. And I used to do that every once in a while. We'd have a sales meeting, and I had at one time 8 salespeople and 2 product presenters. And we would meet on Monday mornings, and then they were all over the country after that. And these weren't Zoom meetings, they were in person. And one of my favorite things to do, and they knew it would happen at some point, is I'd say, okay, today, each person gets up and tells a story. You got 5 minutes. I don't care what it's about. Doesn't even have to be about banking software. Tell me a story in 5 minutes. And that was a powerful, enjoyable experience, because we learned about each other that way, but we also found that some of these people, in telling the story, I loved the way you described the character. I love the way you were talking about that bank in Nichols, New York, and you went into a little bit more about him and his wife, and when they visited our company, when they came down here to Orlando on vacation, the way she was dressed, she was kind of frumpy, and I mean, that was so cool because it added to the story. I could picture those characters when you told that. Well, we typically don't have those kind of discussions in business meetings, right?
No.
But when everybody got up and told their stories, we picked up and we learned from each other. So, I mean, I'm big on the storytelling.
Yeah, humanizing the experience.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that goes back to one of your big points last night about the importance of listening.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And being able to ask good questions. If all I do is, how many of this do you have? Do you do this? Don't you do? I mean, yes, no, those aren't going to help me much.
No.
I learn a little bit, but it's the open-ended questions, the who, what, when, where, why, how.
Right.
Those kind of, when I begin the questions with those words, it puts you in a position where you're going to share more. So, yeah.
Very good.
And that makes me think of one of the other big themes I picked up in your book. You mentioned yesterday how you had finished the manuscript right when the 9/11 attacks happened.
Right.
And I noticed that some of the most positive comments on your book were that it was a very relatable take on how 9/11 affected people's lives. And for me, like, hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but in the last couple lines, you had this comment where it was the character reflected on how they were having a good day, how they were having a good day, and the final line was, maybe tomorrow will be better. I hope tomorrow will be better.
Right.
And it's very apparent to me that when people remember 9/11, the nation was obviously in a very hard time. People were very, depressed with what was going on, and how they could have a better next day. Like, what was the future going to look like? And I wonder if you could speak to how important it is not just to think about the good things in your life and how good your day is going, like today, but to think, I could have an even better day tomorrow.
Well, and it's amazing. You got the book last night and you've already picked up this much from it. So you warm my heart because you're exactly right with that. The grandfather, at the end of the day, after he's made the jigsaw puzzle with his son and they have the life lesson about the missing piece, the grandfather's looking out his kitchen window and he thinks about, how the day started out, bad weather, it destroyed their plans, it just ruined everything. And they turned it into a pretty good day. And he says to himself, geez, today had been a pretty good day. Maybe tomorrow would be even better.
Exactly.
And that's where I wanted the message of hope to come from.
Yeah.
We all need to have hope wherever we are, whenever, wherever, no matter what the circumstances. We can watch the 6 o'clock news every night, and we can learn real quick where there are ugly situations going on in this world, problems. It doesn't matter if it's in our community on the 6 o'clock local news or the national news. There's not a lot of great news there, right?
Right.
But I want to be hopeful. And I read a devotion the other day where a guy complained to a friend and said, geez, I've lost everything. And the guy said to him, well, have you lost your faith? Well, no, I didn't say that. Did you lose your hope? No, I haven't lost my hope. Do you have your faith? Do you have hope? I guess you didn't lose everything.
Right.
And the guy said, yeah, I get it. I haven't lost everything. So we need to be careful when we speak in those kind of absolutes that, oh, this is terrible, all this. Well, take a deep breath. We all have things to be thankful for. And that's as I'm older now. My gosh, I'm 72 years old, but I remind myself of that every day. I mean, when I get out and my feet hit the floor before I jump out of bed, because I want to make sure I'm steady. I am 72. But I say to myself, this verse from Psalm 118, this is the day the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. That's all we've got. And my second book, Dad's Last Letter, that's a story about a guy who goes to the doctor, finds out he's terminally ill, and then the doctor looks at him and says, I hate to give you this news, but it's the news I got to give you. My wife and I prayed for you last night. I violated your patient confidence, and I found out you're going to be dead in 24 hours. You got 1 day to live. And the guy looked at me and said, you're my doctor? Oh, I'm glad I came to you. Thanks for that prognosis. He said, who else knows when they're going to die?
Right.
At least now you got 24 hours. And it becomes a story about if you only had 24 hours left to live, what would you choose to do with it? How would you spend the 24 hours? Well, guess what? When I wake up in the morning and my feet hit the floor, that's a reminder to me that this is all I've got. So I do want to be hopeful. I do want to think there's something good that's going to happen today. And I really didn't know we were going to do this much of a podcast today, but this is great. This is a great part of my day. I didn't know we were going to do all this. So yeah, we always need to look for the bright spots.
Right. And that was what was so beautiful to me, is that in most books that I've read that have a message of, you got to be hopeful, you got to look for the bright things of your day. This book wasn't just about finding ways to make a day that may seem bleak, be a little better, and you can find the good in it and say, I have a good day. But it was about, even when you have a good day, thinking about having a better one tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, that's something I don't hear a lot. And that was what really stood out to me.
Yeah, cool.
And I wonder if we can relate back to just Ashland. I know that a lot of students that I've talked to, when they talk about the situation they're in at Ashland or the class they're in, there'll be mixed reactions. Some students will be like, I really don't like it here, or I love it here, that kind of thing.
Right.
But for students now that are in undergrad that maybe aren't having the best experience, or are, how would you say, or what would you say is the best way to find that hope in the future? When as you said yesterday in the meeting, how it's job applications and applying for jobs and getting those interview processes, they're much harder now. They're long processes. Prices for things have gone up, like you said, since from when you were younger. How can an undergrad find that kind of hope?
Well, and I don't know if you wanted the podcast to go in this direction or not, but
it's open-ended,
it
can go anywhere.
Okay. Me, that's all about our faith. I am a faith-based guy. And I went through an experience here at Ashland, and I'll just share it with you. I was here at Ashland playing football. We went to an away game at Western Illinois University. We got beat 21-20. It was on Halloween, 1971.
Wow.
Geez, can you imagine? That's 72. I remember that.
I know
There's
what
a
you're
reason
talking
why.
about too. You were in a cornfield.
And all of a sudden, I come home and I call my mom, And Dad, because my younger brother that same day was playing in a big arch rival high school game for the championship of their high school conference.
Mhm.
And my mom answers the phone. I said, how did Ricky's team do? And she goes, well, bad news. We got beat 21-20. I said, that's weird. I lost 21-20. And she said, we got bigger problems than football. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, your dad had a stroke at the game and he's in the hospital and we don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, yeah, be kidding. I mean, first of all, I didn't know what a stroke was, but I know my dad's in the hospital and that's not good.
Mhm.
I get a call the next morning when I wake up from my next door neighbor back in Buffalo. He says, you got to come home. Your dad now has had a massive stroke in the hospital and we don't know if he's going to live. So I got myself home to Buffalo, New York, and I come there and my dad's laid in the hospital bed and the only sound in the room is the EKG machine blipping.
Mhm.
And I had a broken hand. I was playing football that season. I broke 4 metacarpals here.
Wow.
They would put a plaster cast on. I'd practice all week, take the cast off Friday, tape it up, play in the game. And right after the game, put a cast on it. And I grabbed my dad's hand
Mhm.
and he felt the plaster cast. He couldn't speak, but these big tears rolled down his cheeks out of his eyes. And I walked out of that room and went to the men's room and got physically ill.
Mhm.
I just never expected to have an experience seeing my father like that.
Right.
So Fred Martinelli, the head coach, told me before I left, you come back by Thursday, you'll start on Saturday. So my mom and my brother, older brother, said to me, you got to go back to school. Dad wouldn't want you sitting here. We don't know how long this is going to go on. So I come back to Ashland,
Mhm.
and as it turns out, it's parents' weekend. I go out on the football field, and back then they had a tradition where they had these numbers cut out, not the numbers, it's like a cardboard piece, like in a running race.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they had them for every player. So the parents would wear their son's number in the stands.
Mhm.
And I come out at Community Stadium and my number 26 is taped on the bottom right-hand corner of the scoreboard. The cheerleaders had put it up there. They knew my mom and dad couldn't be there. They knew my dad was in the hospital, may not live. And I will tell you, I came out onto that field for pregame warmups and I saw that number and thought about where my mom and dad were.
Wow.
And I knelt on the 33-yard line right there and I prayed. And I said to God, hey, I know I haven't always been here for you the way I should have been, but I'm asking right now for your help because I don't know if I'm going to have my dad how much longer. I need a heavenly Father to help me through the rest of life. And when I opened my eyes, 2 of my teammates had knelt with me and put their hands on my shoulders. And let me tell you, I was reborn that moment wearing an Ashland College football uniform.
Wow.
And that's why this place is so special to me. As it turned out, my dad recovered, lived another 13 years as a stroke person, never went back to work, but he could walk with an ortho cane, did volunteer work at the hospital. He lived a very full life, very much because my mom was a great caregiver.
Wonderful.
But I will tell you, that faith-based experience in my life changed my life. And I don't know where else I would have found the hope, knowing when times were difficult or things were bad. Because I'll tell you, I mentioned last night when you introduced me, I've had the dark days too. I've been through a divorce. I went through a divorce I didn't see coming. I ended up losing 17 pounds in 30 days. I mean, all of a sudden, my wife and my 2 boys are off living in a condo, and I'm in a house that's half empty. The dining room furniture is gone. The kitchen furniture is gone. I mean, I'm living by myself. It was a bad, tough time. But let me tell you, God was with me through the whole thing. And there were a lot of those days when I said, Bud, I know today isn't the best day, but guess what? Tomorrow may be a little bit better. And that's
Right.
how I kept putting one step forward ahead of the other. So for me, it's having, and as a matter of fact, chapter 12 in the missing piece is all about having a spiritual foundation in your life. I think that's critical to maintaining your hope in life.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
What a personal touch that was.
Well,
Posting the
that's the
parent
story.
number on the scoreboard.
Oh yeah,
That was amazing. Wow.
yeah.
What can you tell us about your time as a football player here at AU?
It was interesting. I was coming from a place where I'd played at a much different level. Playing at the University of Buffalo, I played against Virginia Tech, Boston College, Army, Navy. I played at both academies.
Wow.
I played in the ABC Regional Game of the Week against Holy Cross. We were considered what you would consider today Division I football.
Right.
And all of a sudden I come to Ashland. Now I'm playing schools like Muskingum, Baldwin Wallace, Wittenberg. Very honestly, a lot of those small colleges I hadn't heard of. But the thing that was very interesting is it was darn good football. And for as well as I did, I got knocked on my butt for Ashland too. That happens to anybody that plays the game.
Right.
And even though I'd played in a program at a much different level, when I came here to Ashland, I found out, hey, this is great. I like my teammates. I like my coaches. I like the feel of the college that I represent. I liked everything about it. So I just had a great experience here. And I mean, a lot of that started with Fred Martinelli, the head coach, but we had a defensive coordinator named John Valentine, a coach named Gary Moose, a guy named Bill Brailsford. Those individuals, I mean, their fingerprints are on me somewhere.
Wow.
Because they touched my life that way. So yeah, I was really blessed. And last year, our 1972 team celebrated our 50-year anniversary.
Wow.
We had 45 guys come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was great to see those guys and know that here we are coming back together 50 years later.
Wow.
And we were connected because we played a game together, right?
Amazing.
At the college level. So
Wow.
it was very cool.
Do you have any advice for our student athletes today on how to achieve success both on the field and in the classroom?
So it's a very good point. So
Yeah,
Bud is a summa cum laude, right?
well, when summa cum laude, I'd take that. Cum laude instead of laude, how come? That's what some people say. But no, I think the thing that needs to be emphasized, and players need to understand this, and I will say the players at Ashland today are at a different level. When I came here, there was a guy that had played at Ashland 2 years ahead of me, and he got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. And there was a guy I played with named Bill Overmeyer who ended up getting drafted.
Oh, wow.
But really today at Ashland, playing Division II football, there's a lot more of these guys that probably might have a chance to play on Sundays in the NFL.
Oh, wow.
Where I am involved with a Division III, NCAA Division III program with non-scholarship athletes. I don't think any of them, really, I'm not being disrespectful, I just don't think they're good enough to play in the NFL. That's why when I'm around them, I remind them all the time, there are bigger things in life than football.
Wow.
You know, that you see sometime in the store, you'll see a 10-year-old kid and he's wearing a shirt that says football is life. I want to go up to the parents and say, no, it's not. It's not life. It's a great game. It's a great way to learn valuable life lessons, to build relationships. But you know what? You got to get into the academic side of what you're doing, because when you develop your brain cells and when you learn things, that's what will take you further in life. Not figuring out, how to split the difference in a zone defense if you're back there in the secondary. Those are things. There's things you learn in football that can be applied in life, but you've got to pay attention in the classroom, and you've got to take that seriously. And coaches that fail to give their players that message, I think, are missing the boat. There is a bigger picture to life than what you do athletically.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't, I know you're a soccer player. I think that's great. But you know what? You realize, and I know you've already figured it out, you're going to make a living with your brain cells, not dribbling the soccer ball down the field, right? So that's, I think you just, if you're a coach, you have that kind of responsibility to talk to your players. Tell them that.
Very good. Very good.
I had one more. I have to head out soon to get to class, but
Yeah.
I have one more question for you. What are some of the biggest changes that you see as you've come back to Ashland the last couple of years that you see being made as opposed to when you were at Ashland College? And do you think they're good or bad changes?
Very good question.
Well, that's a very good question. I think, certainly the technology is so different today. We didn't ever go to a classroom with a laptop. We had to take notes by hand. Everybody, I mean, that's going to be so totally different. The one thing that I am impressed with and that I'm really happy to see is what you guys are all about with the WCC. I mean, what you end up doing in life, I mean, I don't care what your major is and what you learn academically specific to your major, you still are going to have to be effective when it comes to communicating your ideas, your feelings. I mean, even your personal relationships are impacted significantly by how well you communicate. And I think that is, when I came here and found out about the WCC, I thought, boy, this is really, really neat that Ashland sees the need for this. Because you can go on a lot of college campuses, I don't care, you can walk across the stage, shake the president's hand, you've got that piece of paper, and off you go. But if you didn't really learn how to communicate your ideas and share those things in an effective way that influences other people, I think you really missed the boat. And that's a huge change. We didn't have anything like that when I was here at Ashland. So I think it's great. I think it's great that you guys are a part of that.
Yeah, we're happy to serve our students in our AU community.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. Anything else, gentlemen?
Can you end with a fun fact? We just talked about technology. Can you say what a computer sold for in 1977?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you that. My first day of work at IBM, 1977, April 2nd of 1977. IBM introduced the IBM System 34, 32K of memory, 27 megabytes of disk, 8 workstations, 300 line a minute printer. Purchase price $177,000. And that was $177,000 in 1977.
Wow.
So when you think about what that investment was to tell people that we were going to be walking around with these handheld devices and doing what we're able to do on them, people would say you're on drugs. Are you kidding me? No, it's not going to happen. And yet that's where it's all progressed from.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting you asked that. Yeah.
Can you share with us a funny story about your time here at EU?
Ashland, oh gosh. No, the funny story, I don't know if I would tell the funny one. I told the serious one about, when I was knelt on the field and was really reborn born as part of Ashland football. I can't tell you, and I can't emphasize enough, but how, instead of funny, I would just say how rich my overall experience was being here. And I feel so grateful for having had those experiences. If I could wish anything for you guys, is when you're 72, you feel the same way about the experiences you had here. I do think back, one funny story. The president of the college had some nice pine trees in his backyard, and one of the fraternities decided they were going to donate a Christmas tree to a charitable orphanage in town. So in the middle of the night, they went and cut down one of the trees in the backyard. Well, there were enough trees that the president didn't really notice that right away. And the fraternity members felt so good about what they had done, they decided they would maybe extend the harvest, shall we say. So there were a couple more trips made, and finally President Glenn Clayton wanted to know where some of his evergreen trees had disappeared to. And I won't say which fraternity it was, and I was not in a fraternity, so it's not on me. But yeah, there were, that was a pretty good story that we all
For a good cause,
enjoyed.
right?
For a good cause. That's how they covered themselves.
And it had to
It
be
was
the
for a good
president's
cause.
house.
And it had to be the president's house. Why not?
That's so funny.
So,
Well, thank you so much about that. I know we could talk to you like all day long. You got
well,
so
it's
much
fun to be
wisdom,
here.
so much insight to share with us.
Yeah.
well,
Thank you so much.
hey, you're welcome.
Appreciate
God
your
bless you
time, and
guys. I love you.
Hope you have a great time here.
Yeah.
You're in homecoming week. And
Yeah.
We're glad
Go
your
Eagles.
AU experience
Go
is still
Eagles,
going
yeah.
on.
Yeah, absolutely. It still is. This is part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you
Sir.
for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Wonderful.